In this video lecture, we will discuss about sulfur cycle. As we know that sulfur is the 10th most abundant element. If I talk about the nature of sulfur, it is solid, crystalline, brittle yellow, tasteless, odorless, and non-metallic element. The major source of sulfur is the rock. So let's move to the introduction part. The sulfur cycle describes the movement of sulfur through the atmosphere, mineral forms, and through living things. Sulfur is required for the production of amino acid such as cysteine and methionine. Cysteine and the methionine are the sulfur containing amino acid. It is also required for the synthesis of vitamin such as biotin, and it is also sulfur is required in the oxidative phosphorylation in the CUS and FES center. Presence of sulfur in the protein, amino acids, vitamin and enzyme that is necessary for the plants and animal. So sulfur is an essential nutrition for plant and animal. In soil, sulfur enter in a form of plant residues, animal waste, fertilizer and the rain. Sulfur is primarily found in seawater or sedimentary rocks. The main source of sulfur is the seawater, or we can say that sedimentary rocks. Sulfur is released through the weathering of rocks. Due to the weathering of rocks, the sulfur is released from the rocks. Once it is released from the rocks, sulfur is exposed to the air. It's come in a contact with air. It combine with oxygen and become sulfate, that is SO4 2-. And we can also say that it is always, not always, but in the sometime it also occur in a combination with several other metals such as PbS, that is sulfanilidin lead, HGS, that is mercury sulfide. It is also sulfur is also occur in a combinations with several other metal. Okay, the examples are PbS, HGS. Now let's move to the cycle. Before I go to the cycle, I just like to give a small introduction on the form of sulfur. S is stand for sulfur. SO4 2-, that is sulfate. SO2, that is sulfur dioxide. H2S is for hydrogen sulfide. This stand for elementary sulfur. S2-, that stand for sulfide form. S is for sulfur. SO4 2-, that is for sulfate. SO2, that is sulfur dioxide. H2S, that is hydrogen sulfide. This stand for elementary sulfur and this stand for sulfide form. This is sulfide form. As I have told you that sulfur is always present in a form of sulfate, that is SO4 2-. SO4 2-. Sulfur is always present in a form of sulfate. Now plants and microbe assimilate this sulfate and convert this into the organic form. Sulfate that are present, sulfur is present in the form of sulfate that is taken up by the plants and bacteria that will assimilate and convert into the organic form. Organic forms it has been converted. Plants is also been consumed by the animal. So the sulfur is moved through the food chain and released when the organism die and decompose. Once this organic sulfur compound that is in the form of protein in the plants and the animal, once this organic form of sulfur, once it's assimilated by the plants and animals, after some time there is the dead and decay, that is the dead of the plants and animals, and the microorganisms present in the soils are decomposed by the microorganism. The decompose by the microorganisms, when degradation is carried out by the microorganisms, are known as mineralizations. Okay, again I am repeating. Sulfate that is utilized by the plants and bacteria. Plants, once it is that is converted into the organic form. Organic form, the protein in the plant and animals, as we know that the again the plant is consumed by the animal, so that convert into the organic sulfur compound. After the dead and decay, that result into the mineralization that is done by the bacteria that convert the organic into the simple form. Then mineralization leads to the H2S, that is hydrogen sulfate, SO3 minus, and elemental sulfur that leads to the formation of this H2S. Or sulfate is directly reduced to H2S, that is hydrogen sulfate sulfide, by the process of reduction that can be done in the anaerobic respiration by the involvement of the two bacteria, that is D-sulfovibrio and D-sulfotomaculum. I am writing the spelling of D-sulfovibrio and D-sulfotomaculum. D-sulfovibrio and D-sulfotomaculum. This sulfate is directly being reduced to H2S. SO4 that is directly reduced to H2S by the anaerobic respiration by the D-sulfovibrio and D-sulfotomaculum. This bacteria can convert the SO4 2 minus into H2S, or then H2S this is been oxidized to again SO4 2 minus by the thiobacillus thiooxidans. Thiobacillus thiooxidans. Thiobacillus H2S that has been formed, it can be oxidized by the sulfur oxidizing bacteria to sulfate by the thiobacillus thiooxidans. This is what all about the sulfur cycle. First, the sulfur that is present in the form of sulfate, it is utilized by the bacteria and the animal, plant and the bacteria and the animal, that convert into the organic form. In the organic form, once it has been converted into the organic form, again this can be degraded or by the mineralized by the bacteria and the fungi, and that convert into the H2S. This cycle can be done by like this. Then H2S that has been formed, that can be oxidized again to sulfate by the sulfur oxidizing bacteria, that is thiobacillus thiooxidans. This cycle can be followed by this, or it can be directly by this. Again, this sulfate is reduced to H2S by the process of the sulfur reducing bacteria, that is disulfurto vibrio and disulfurto maculum.